My partner and I went to this awesome party that RBBL Consulting Incorporated put on a few weeks back. It was to celebrate a big accomplishment by one of the top bosses. The event was held at the Hilton Hotel ballroom and it was really something special. My wife looked stunning in a chic black dress that showed off her gorgeous legs, while I kept it simple with a dark blue suit, white shirt, and tie like most of the other guys there. As we walked through the massive room with our guests, I couldn't believe how many people were there. It seemed like there were already more than 200 guests, and more kept arriving. I knew that Ribbled Consulting was doing well in their industry, but I had no idea they had grown so much in the past year. I was shocked to see hundreds of employees and their guests filling up the fancy ballroom. Sarah had been working at Ribbled for almost 10 years, and I even recognized a few of her co-workers. From previous hangouts, as we were chillin', she saw some familiar peeps and introduced me to her co-workers who I hadn't met yet. When the host told everyone to take a seat, we grabbed spots at a big round table near the front. There was some soft music playing in the background as we chatted with the others at our table, who were mostly younger than us. Even though there was an age difference, we quickly felt at ease talking and joking with our new pals. It was cool to see my wife in her element, making professional connections while we were just kicking back. Man, that dinner was bomb. After we listened to those boring speeches about some old dude's big contract win, Sarah's CEO finally told everyone to kick back and mingle. The night turned into a dance party with live music and free drinks in a huge room. Thank God the band played some old school jams instead of that annoying rap crap. When a slow song came on, I asked Sarah to dance and she made sure we were the first ones out on the floor. Then she flashed me a big smile. And she just nodded, so her husband pulled her onto the dance floor with the other couples. They fit right in, like they've been doing it for years. In our 14 years of marriage, we've been to plenty of events hosted by my company, from casual parties to fancy balls. But none of them were as extravagant as this one in the huge ballroom. As Sarah's company grew, they started throwing even more events, from simple happy hour gatherings to lavish celebrations like this one. Sarah saw these parties as a perk of her job and a chance to make valuable connections. Me and some important friends joined Sarah for some free food and drinks all night. Sarah and I stuck together most of the time, with other guests trying to get her to dance but she usually turned them down. We valued our friendship and knew we had each other's backs, so we could relax and enjoy our vacation without any stress. My wife was happy and I was happy for her. Even in her 40s, my thin, blonde wife stayed in shape and loved to dance, all while keeping her fun personality. She was still a total babe and I adored her. Guys always checked her out, but I didn't think much of it. I just figured she'd turn heads wherever we went. As a fit 40-year-old guy, I wasn't jealous of her having a good time, even if she danced with other people. But as the night went on, my happy mood started to fade. Sarah had just come back from the dance floor, looking a bit flushed and holding a glass of wine. We sat in silence, watching the dancers below. That's when I sensed someone coming towards us. Hey, a big dude with broad shoulders strutted over to our table, all determined like, through the noisy music. He smirked at me before turning his attention to my wife, reaching out his hand like he was expecting something. I was taken aback by his cocky move and looked over at Sarah, ready to ask who this guy was. But she was just staring at him with this weird look on her face. And as soon as I saw it, I knew something was up. I hadn't seen that expression in a while, but I recognized it right away. That look was meant for her husband. Once, I only ever saw Sarah give me that loving look in our early days of marriage. But one day, at a work party, I caught her gazing adoringly at some young dude. Turns out, she was getting a little too friendly with him. Then, a buddy of mine started giving me the side eye. A few weeks later, we all ended up at a coffee shop with her friends, and guess who showed up? Yep, the same guy from the party. Sarah seemed to be hitting the booze harder than usual that night. When the guy asked her to dance, she just grinned. Me and them were dancing together all cute and cozy. I acted like I was clumsy and made an excuse to step back and watch them from afar. Later, when she thought I was too out of it to notice, she snuck out with him through a side door. I caught them in the car, getting all cozy and letting him touch her gently. I didn't know how far they had gone or how far she was willing to go, but it looked like they were about to cross a line. I let her get away with some inappropriate stuff while I figured out how to address the situation. I came home and told my wife that I was done with our marriage if she didn't dump her side piece. She was shocked that I knew about it and said sorry, claiming she loved me and that the guy was just a blast from the past for fun. She swore they never went too far, had already ended things, and promised it wouldn't happen again. Sarah and I were married, but finding out about her past actions made it hard for me to trust her in our relationship. Man, we've been through some tough times, but therapy really helped us get through it. However, I could tell something was bothering her by the look on her face, even though it wasn't about me. Sarah seemed optimistic as she grabbed her partner's hand. She had this excited and hopeful look, but not quite a smile. Her eyes were shining with happiness as she accepted the invitation and got up to leave the table with him. She didn't even glance back at me, leaving me feeling a bit left out. The tall guy took Sarah's hand and confidently led her to the dance floor, feeling accomplished. Meanwhile, the other person. Me and the other couples at the table were fascinated by the colorful gathering. I exchanged nervous looks with my table mates. The couple next to me quickly went to the bar, while the woman next to me dragged her husband to the dance floor. Everyone else looked curious but didn't say anything. I felt a bit jealous, but I held it back. I told myself that my suspicions were unfounded. Sarah and I were faithful to each other. She had danced with a few guys at the party. At a recent party, except for one time years ago, she's always been a loyal and committed wife and partner. I guess after all this time, she knew I wouldn't put up with any nonsense. My jealousy faded for a bit as I watched my slim, middle-aged wife dancing to a fast song with her tall dance partner. I could see her admiring glances at him. Sarah is a great dancer and her graceful moves caught the audience's attention. I felt relieved when the song was over. I thought she would thank the guy and come back to our table, but instead she just kept on dancing with him as the next slow love song came on. They were all cuddled up and never broke apart. I wasn't sure if I should go over and break them up, so I just watched from afar. It was pretty clear that she didn't really care about what I thought. The guy was holding her close and his hands kept wandering down to her waist, making them move together. She didn't seem to mind his touch or how close they were dancing. She looked like she was having a blast and was only focused on him. Okay, so my girl Sarah was dancing with this tall dude and I was getting annoyed. I knew if she kept acting shady, I'd catch her real quick. They disappeared into the packed dance floor and I couldn't see them anymore. I had a gut feeling they were up to no good when the slow song ended and another one started right away. Sarah, of course, didn't come back. It took like 5 more songs for the crowd to thin out before I saw my blushing, giggling wife still in a tight embrace with that guy, busting some moves. Hey friend, I was getting antsy waiting for her to come back. Some of the couples from our table came back looking all awkward. I couldn't help myself, so I asked the lady next to me who the tall dude Sarah was dancing with was. I knew she worked with Sarah. She seemed pissed by my question at first, but then she calmed down and sighed before telling me, "That's Mr. Jackson, the new assistant director of sales. He started a few months ago." Does Jackson have a first name? Trayvon. Trayvon Jackson. Turns out Sarah is currently working for him. He's her boss. I was like, how long has she been working for him? Haven't seen him in ages, the woman told me. Oh, he just started here a few months back. Used to be a college athlete, maybe in football. He's from a different office and seems to be the CEO's favorite. He's already taken charge of a whole department and is moving up the ranks fast. Then she said she needed to use the restroom and hurried off, probably to avoid talking more. The music kept playing in the background. So, I was scanning the dance floor, right? And it was like way less packed than before. I was trying to find Sarah, but she was nowhere to be seen. Then I glanced over and saw her chilling at Mr. Jackson's table, chatting it up with Trayvon. I felt kinda left out, you know. Meanwhile, there were other couples at the table, just having a grand old time, laughing and swapping stories. I walked over and noticed they were all throwing back shots, with empty glasses all over the place. As I got closer, I heard Sarah's voice, but it sounded off, like something was up with her. So, I was drinking at the party, right? And then she spots me and all of a sudden, she stops laughing and tries to act all serious. She's like, "Hey honey, sorry for ditching you, I'm just having a drink with my friends. Have you met Trayvon yet?" I didn't know how to react. Should I play it cool and ignore her attitude, or should I call her out in front of everyone? I ended up just sort of staying neutral, looking serious but acting interested. I was like, nah, I haven't met him. Sarah was totally grossed out, so she got up and came over to me. She introduced me to the people at her table, but no one bothered to stand up or shake my hand. They just waved and looked like they found me funny. When she introduced me to Jackson, he shook my hand way too hard and gave a quick nod before going back to his conversation. The girl next to him giggled at the subtle insult but didn't say anything. I told Sarah that it was getting late and I was tired and ready to leave. Sarah looked surprised and kind of offended. I looked her in the eye and asked, "Are you coming with us, dear?" "It's only been a few hours," she said, sounding a bit drunk. "I'm leaving right now," I said firmly. She replied with a frown, "I don't want to leave yet, Carl. It's still early. Why don't you go back to the table and I'll join you in a bit? I want to talk to Trayvon about something." I couldn't help but feel suspicious of Trayvon, not Mr. Jackson. She seemed pretty chummy with a coworker, ignoring me and dancing with him for the past half hour before having a few drinks at his table. It didn't look good. Khalil was fed up with the usual work dynamic, but he kept his cool and didn't let it show. Instead, he just shrugged and shot Sarah a look of contempt. "Go on, Sarah, I'm outta here," he said, turning away. As he walked off, he could hear snickers from behind him. "Need a ride home, Sarah?" someone asked. Carl quickly made his way to the exit, keys in hand. He knew Sarah would need her purse before they left. As he got closer to the parking lot, he heard his wife's heels clicking on the pavement. "Carl, wait," she yelled angrily. Eventually, she caught up to him, grabbed his arm, and she tried to drag me somewhere, so I quickly stepped back, almost making her stumble. I sprinted to the car, moving so fast that she struggled to keep up in her high heels. "Just get in," I told her honestly as I opened my door. After I got into the driver's seat, I unlocked her door. Normally, I would open her door like a gentleman, but tonight I was too pissed off and just waited for her to walk around the car and open her own door. She slid into her seat, her voice sharp. "That was really rude," she said. "What's up? What's up with you, Carl? Everyone was laughing at how you were acting. I have to deal with those people, you know. It's not even that late yet, the band is still playing. What's the problem at the party?" I couldn't help but notice how focused Sarah was while dancing with a group. I didn't want to bring up my thoughts about her crush on her boss, so I just mentioned being tired and not having fun. Sarah got mad at me for being unfriendly and we argued for a bit, but she eventually let it go. The ride home that night was tense as hell, marking the start of our weekend problems. Sarah was distant and we barely talked. When I asked about her new job, she scowled and said she didn't appreciate my snarky comments about her boss. It seemed like she respected him way more than I did. Over the next week, things got a little better. Sarah still hid her feelings for her boss, but her eyes showed she was crushing on him. She even mentioned she had been moved to his department. So, I started working in his department as his assistant, but I didn't mention him because I thought it was a boring topic. She was probably right about that, but then I noticed her looking at me with longing and enjoying a moment while we were dancing at the hotel. Things started to settle down over the next few weeks. We had some intimate moments here and there, but it lacked emotion. It wasn't really making love. I hoped Sarah would understand my fears about cheating and accept my feelings when we finally talked about it. So, she was acting all out of line at the party and got all defensive when called out. She ended up accusing Carl of being childish. "I've always danced with other guys at events and you never had a problem with it before. But, I guess your boss is a different story. I mentioned how you two danced that night and how his hands were getting a little too touchy-feely, but you didn't seem to care." "Oh, poor you," she laughed. "Maybe I let him touch my shoulder, but who cares? It was just friendly banter, you know. You seem pretty worried about it though. Are you gonna stress over it? Every time I talk to someone now, it's always about her. I don't like how she acts around you. Is it because she's a nice young woman who can tell that I'm not as old or ugly as she is? Or is it because she's Asian and you have a problem with that?" Her smug smile was hard to ignore. "I don't have a problem with her race, but I really don't like how she acts like she's best buds with someone who seems to want to be a part of her friend group. Don't let your curiosity get the best of you. Hey, Trayvon has been an awesome boss and I'm grateful for the chance he gave me. He even brought up the possibility of a raise, which was a pleasant surprise. Then she paused and said, "Oh, and one more thing, I'll be going to see a customer with Trayvon and a few other sales guys in a couple of weeks. It's kind of last minute, I know, but everything's all set for the week after. We've been organizing this for a bit now," she confessed. "I was gonna tell you after the party, but you beat me to it. I was feeling down, so I waited until you were in a better mood to break the news that you and Trayvon are going. I sarcastically mentioned how perfect it is for you to socialize and have fun without your usual partner. How long are you guys gonna be gone anyway?" Sarah gave me a dirty look and said, "We're leaving on Wednesday and coming back Sunday morning. Why not come back on Friday night? We have an important meeting with a client scheduled for Saturday. I'm hoping they'll sign a big deal. Sign on with us and Trayvon will be the face of our company, it's a big chance. He says he wants me there to help with a bunch of stuff. Oh Sarah, can't you see? That guy is just trying to, you know. Trayvon isn't trying to do anything shady, you're just jealous, a foolish jealous. Listen, my dear wife, I want you to go to work tomorrow and ask for a transfer out of his department. He's no good and I won't let him ruin our marriage." Her eyes widened in shock. I don't think she expected me to do that, Carl. This is the best job I've ever had and I'm not going to give it up. Sarah was determined. "Oh, come on, Carl," she urged. "You need to see reason. I'm not quitting just to make you feel better. I earned this opportunity and I'm not going to pass it up," Sarah insisted. "Trayvon respects me and I won't do anything to jeopardize that." Sarah ended their conversation and left the house. As she got into her car and drove away, Carl was still trying to talk things through. I chased after her. "Where are you?" "Hey," as we were leaving, he said, "We gotta keep talking about this." But Sarah didn't say anything, she was focused on driving. "Oh," she was like, "we're definitely going out to dinner with Mary." She sounded pretty determined. I just hope she stops being so insecure so we can have a proper conversation later. She walked off, leaving me feeling down in my recliner as our relationship kept getting worse. There were constant arguments and doubts in the air. Could I trust her not to cheat again? The saying, "once a cheater, always a cheater," was stuck in my head. After all these years together, it was hard to believe she wouldn't do it again. Man, I messed up again by catching my girl with her boss. The way she was looking at him had me feeling some type of way. She didn't seem to care about how I was feeling in this messed up situation. The husband, thinking his wife is cheating, hires a detective to follow her. The detective sneaks a camera into her hotel room to get proof. The husband ends up talking to a lawyer about his options, since he can't afford a fancy detective and doesn't know how to fight. Tough spot to be in. So basically, I had to just trust the evidence and the legal system to figure out this mess. The focus is on my husband trying to get to the bottom of things and find justice without getting into a physical fight. Even though I didn't have any solid proof, I just had a gut feeling that something was off in my marriage. My wife's weird behavior and her getting too close to her coworker Jackson made me think we were in some kind of secret battle for her job. We're both stubborn and refuse to back down. I straight up accused her of cheating. Man, she had a bad attitude and was way too flirty. She wasn't happy about my prices and didn't like that I didn't buy into her drama. Things were tense as we were planning her trip with Jackson. But the weekend before she left, she started to warm up to me during our lunches. She was polite and tried to be nice. When she got back home, she was on time and even cooked dinner if there wasn't anything ready. After work, she started wearing more revealing clothes like tight shorts and low-cut tops. We hadn't hooked up in like 2 weeks and I was definitely feeling it. I saw her wearing these sexy outfits around the house and I figured she was trying to seduce me before her trip so she could leave without feeling bad. I couldn't help but appreciate my wife Sarah's natural beauty. She wasn't a supermodel and I definitely wasn't a Hollywood hottie, but Sarah was smart, attractive, and her slim figure was appealing for a 42-year-old woman. She had perky boobs, a pretty flat stomach, and long, sexy legs that she often showed off in her short shorts. I was so annoyed that she couldn't see where I was coming from and I really wanted to bring back the good times we used to have in our marriage. I was torn between giving in or sulking and waiting for her to see things my way. The thing that really bothered me was the thought that if we didn't have sex, she might get all worked up and some sketchy guy like Jackson could take advantage of her before she left on her trip. Eventually, we both gave in and had a real intimate moment. Our connection was so strong and our passion was off the charts as we embraced. We were snuggled up in each other's arms, finding solace and comfort, cherishing the little time we had left together. My worries were still lingering as she started packing her bags on a Wednesday morning before she had to leave. At exactly 9 o'clock, a taxi pulled up to take her to the airport. I wanted to drive her myself, but work got in the way. I intentionally left a bit later to give her a goodbye kiss and wish her luck, even though I was anxious inside. As her bags were loaded into the taxi, Sarah gave me a look. With a confused look, "Carl, don't stress," she told me. "I love you, my love. Last night was amazing, and I appreciate you trusting me. You have nothing to worry about." "I hope so," I said honestly. "I love you, baby. I'll miss you a lot." "Of course, sweetheart, I won't get jealous. I trust you. It's just a work trip, and I'm sure you'll be back soon. We can pick up right where we left off last night." When she drove away, a tight feeling in my chest made me worry about her. So there was this supervisor who seemed shady. I had a feeling she would be on guard and not let him mess with our awesome relationship. Wednesday night was rough. Sarah could tell I was uneasy and she reached out to me twice that day, once when she got to the hotel and again in the evening after grabbing dinner with her colleagues. We didn't bring up her difficult boss, instead we chatted about her nice hotel room and how excited she was for the upcoming client meetings. She thanked her supervisor for believing in her and promised to do well. I replied, "No worries, just focus on kicking butt." Casually, that was not cool. We expressed our love and ended the chat that night. I struggled to sleep on Thursday because work was tough. I messed up a few orders and got scolded by my boss. I hate making mistakes, but I was preoccupied with Sarah's upcoming vacation. My wife called me from home and we shared updates. "I adored you until we both chuckled," her voice comforting me. Friday was awful. My boss was mad when he found more mistakes. I faked being sick. I got kicked out for being useless at work, so I left early and decided to focus on my personal life. On my way home, I called Rebelled Consulting to reach Trayvon Jackson. His secretary said he was out on business and would be back on Monday. As a family friend, I needed to tell him something important, but she wouldn't give me his cell number. She did give me the address of where he was staying, so I looked up the hotel's info online. I can't afford to investigate my wife's behavior during her trip properly. I was like, screw it, I'll just put this shit on my credit card with enough cash to buy a flight ticket for Saturday morning. I really wanted to book one for Friday night, but all the damn flights were taken. I figured hanging out with Sarah on Saturday night would calm my nerves about whatever she's been up to. I was hella jittery during the flight, and I noticed the flight attendant giving me a weird look, probably wondering why I was so damn anxious. When I got there, I rented a small car at the airport and made it to the resident in around 11 a.m. Sarah always seemed really busy with her clients, especially on weekends. I thought she was just working hard until I caught her chilling by the pool in a cute bikini, sipping on a drink with her boss Trayvon. Another coworker was there too, chatting and having a drink. It was a surprising sight and my heart sank a bit. Sarah and Trayvon seemed to be enjoying each other's company, along with another couple. Trayvon, the boss, was sharing a hilarious story that had everyone laughing. Sarah looked like she was having a good time, but there was still something off about her. Feeling a bit buzzed in the morning, I parked my car on the other side of the building and snuck up to the entrance. I asked the receptionist casually for Sarah's room key, showing her my driver's license for verification. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Sensen," she said with a smile. I faked a polite thank you and headed to Sarah's room. Once inside, my suspicions were confirmed. Sarah had said she was sharing with another woman, but there were clearly men's clothes scattered around, like ties and suit jackets. So, I was looking around and saw Sarah's stuff all mixed in with some random things like sexy lingerie. The beds were all made, so I figured the maid had already been in there. I glanced out the window and saw people chilling by the pool, all sorts of families and individuals having a good time. Sarah and her crew caught my eye. She was sipping on a drink and having a blast. There was another couple nearby, a white lady and a young black guy, who also seemed to be having a good time. I didn't know them, so I couldn't help but feel nervous around them. My wife was so chill, which made me feel out of place. Sarah surprised us all by wearing a casual swimsuit in this family setting. Trayvon put sunblock on her back and they shared a warm smile. Both groups laughed and had a good time applying sunscreen on. I glanced around the room and snooped through her suitcase, only to be shocked by the amount of lacy underwear and nightgowns she had. She brought it and seemed ready for a fancy event. Trayvon's suitcase had a 12-pack of condoms, but only 4 were left. If he wasn't planning on sharing them, he must have been with my wife. This thought gave me an idea. When I asked about a sewing kit in the lobby, the receptionist directed me to a vending machine that sold travel supplies. I bought one and went back to my room. Meanwhile, Sarah and her friends were still at the pool. I carefully poked tiny holes in their condoms, which probably wouldn't be noticed. I caught Sarah red-handed not taking her pills for birth control. Instead, she was using a diaphragm and spermicide. I snooped through her stuff and found her birth control device. I slyly poked 3 small holes in the side of it. Right next to it was a bottle of spermicide, which I emptied and got rid of. I didn't want to completely empty the bottle so she wouldn't suspect anything. I left just enough for her to use a little bit before it ran out. I was hoping she wouldn't even notice with everything else going on. I thought that not using any spermicide would make it more likely for them to get pregnant, but I wasn't totally sure. I was hoping my plan would pan out. I sneakily messed up the curtain rod, leaving a small gap. I was hoping the couple would be too caught up in their love to notice the slightly open curtain when I left. I just wanted to test Sarah's loyalty and calm my worries, but finding out she was cheating only made me want to ruin their trip even more. My anxiety made it hard for me to think fast enough to follow through with my plan. I had a solid plan, like putting hidden cameras or using Trayvon's work credit card to make fake payments. But unfortunately, I had to bail before I got caught. I parked my car in a quieter spot and watched from afar. I could see the pool area and watched my wife and some other guy having fun, laughing, and acting all lovey-dovey for about an hour. I didn't want to cause any drama or draw attention to myself, so I decided not to stick around for too long. I couldn't help but grin as the 4 buddies headed back to their hotel room. It was in the middle of the afternoon and I couldn't help but wonder what they were up to. Quietly, I climbed a ladder to peek through their window. Just as I had suspected, they were hanging out together. Sarah and Trayvon were cracking up and talking on the bed by the window, while the other couple was playing a fun card game on the other bed. The vibe was chill and everyone seemed to be having a good time, no signs of anything sketchy going on. I decided to bounce. Yo, I was just chilling by myself, soaking in the peaceful vibe and all that natural light. I knew I was kinda pushing it, but after like 15 minutes, no one even noticed me lurking there. I pretended to check out the wall, trying to act all nonchalant while the crowd stayed hooked on the mysterious vibe. Just as I was about to dip, I heard this crazy loud noise from inside. I peeked in and saw my girl Sarah in some deep trouble. 2 dudes were up in her face and it was clear things were getting heated. Trayvon, it was intense. Yo, this dude was all up in her face, grabbing her short blonde hair and shoving his junk in her face, while the other guy was going to town on her from behind. Meanwhile, there was another chick just chilling on the bed, watching and smirking. Sarah was loving it, smiling and screaming like it was the best thing ever. I couldn't help but wonder if this was her first time in a situation like this. Sarah pretended to stumble and act all wobbly, so her friends helped her lay down on the bed. They switched spots and kept on having a good time. Trayvon was kneeling nearby, helping to keep her legs apart while they were all joking around. Sarah, with her head hanging off the bed, smiled and said, "Wow, this is so fun. Keep it going, guys." Her happy laughter suddenly turned into a gasp when someone else came near. She went from being excited to catching her breath and choking in no time. Tears started to fill her eyes as she tried to keep up with the unexpected move, even though she was facing some challenges head-on. So, I saw this crazy thing happen and it really got to me. I felt all kinds of emotions and couldn't help but feel sorry for what I saw. I turned off my recording device and quietly left the scene, not wanting to make a scene. When I got home, I just sat in my comfy recliner watching TV. Then, Sarah's taxi pulled up to our house. I had been psyching myself up all day to act normal and not raise any red flags. When she walked in, she seemed happy and in good spirits. I jumped up and gave her a big hug, welcoming her back. She was like, "Oh. Hey babe, I've really missed you. Did you have a good trip, honey?" Sarah eagerly replied, it was enjoyable and it was also good for our business. We signed an exclusive contract with them. She continued, the trip was great, but I really missed you. I smiled and said, I missed you too, Sarah. She gave me a flirty smile, pushed out her chest, and batted her eyes. I hope you did well, Sarah. We have some unfinished business to discuss, he said calmly. I know this hasn't been easy for either of us, but I'm excited. Colloquial and authentic translation, we had each other's backs, I missed you and I'm glad we're back together. I have a surprise for you tonight, so I hope you're ready. She was excited about it and said it sounded interesting. Let's focus on reconnecting and enjoying our time together, he said gently as he took her suitcase and led the way to our place. I went up the stairs and put the object on the bed. Sarah tried to hug and kiss me, telling me what she wanted. So, I gave her a quick hug and then backed off, giving her space to unpack by herself. She seemed confused by my distance. I had already made dinner for her, which she liked. It seemed like she had used up a lot of energy during her meeting with Trayvon and his friend. She talked about her trip and the meetings she went to, but didn't really mention her boyfriend or boss, who are both African American. Maybe she thought I wouldn't approve, so she didn't bring them up. Sarah thanked me for not asking too many questions. Traveling and having some good business talks with her, I just kept quiet and kept my true feelings to myself. Sarah seemed eager for me to hop into bed with her, maybe to ease her guilt, but I had no interest in being someone's second choice. I couldn't stomach the thought of getting cozy in that nasty room, even with protection. After dinner, I made up an excuse about needing to finish up some work in my office. Sarah seemed unsure about what I said, clueless about the fact that I was rejecting her. I could tell she didn't see that coming. So basically, she was already full and not really craving anything else, so she was cool with waiting for later. I would have had a hard time finding her without some help. Anyway, after dinner, I poured us some wine. Sarah was thankful for the drink, we sat on the couch and I put on the TV. She sat next to me, sipped her wine, and rested her head on my shoulder. I just waited for the wine to kick in. I thought she'd be tired after the long walk with the others, but I couldn't be sure. She was so tired that she couldn't fight back when we finished the first drink. I poured us both another drink, but this time I slyly slipped 2 sleeping pills into hers. She didn't even finish her second drink before passing out. She tried to stay awake and even reached out to touch me, but it was no use. By 10 o'clock, she was out cold. While she was asleep, I carefully took off her clothes before getting close to her. I whispered sweet nothings in her ear to gently wake her up. She looked confused as I started. Hey, I gave her a reassuring smile and said I had a surprise for her. I asked if she wanted to play a fun game, and after thinking about it for a bit, she agreed. We started playing this cool game where we pretended to be different characters and acted out different situations. She was really into it and had a blast. We laughed, played, and had an awesome day together. She woke up the next morning with a big smile on her face, feeling happy and content. We shared a look and continued on with our day, cherishing the amazing time we had. That was awesome, I exclaimed. I thought you were too tired for our usual stuff, but when you woke up, I was pumped. After all those days without you, I gave her a skeptical look. I hope you're not mad at me for moving on like that. Oh no, Carl, she said with a smile. I liked it too. Feel free to keep going whenever you want, honey. We hugged for the next few weeks. I kept hanging out with Sarah, we'd chat and hang out late into the night. I made sure to turn down her advances every time she tried. She told me she wanted to get closer to me, even though she was already seeing someone from work. I wanted her to lean on him when she needed to, but at night when she was asleep, I would hold her gently and pretend we were reaching new heights. She seemed to get it and said I could have her whenever I wanted. This setup worked for both of us, especially as I was dealing with my wife cheating on me. I found myself falling back into a routine, making sure I could resist her attempts to seduce me, even though she was very attractive. I was so damn mad and hurt when I found out she might be messing around with her boss. It made me furious, but I didn't let it ruin our relationship. Instead, I tried to move on and figure out how to get my life back on track after she came back. I acted like everything was normal, even though deep down I knew our marriage was falling apart. I couldn't trust her after what she did, and I was dead set on ending things between us. So, I played it cool and we had some nice chats during dinner about her day and what we were gonna do on the weekend. We went out to dinner and danced a few times. We talked about work and our career goals, but we didn't talk about quitting or changing departments again. She never mentioned it, so I dropped it. After her weekend trip, we kept being lovey-dovey. I had to act normal so she wouldn't catch on to my plans. When we were out, I held her hand and opened doors for her. At home, I gave her foot rubs, supported her, or cuddled with her while stroking her neck. She liked it. There wasn't any hardcore making out, but I would sometimes kiss her after she brushed her teeth before going to bed. That was the only time I started to worry about her other relationships and what could be happening in her personal life. A month later, she told me about another work trip. I clenched my teeth and kept my anger in check, knowing she would probably cheat on me again. I stayed cool and didn't ask about Trayvon coming along. Without any confirmation, I assumed he would be there. I faked being sad about her leaving, but I knew deep down I wouldn't miss her. She wasn't as clear about not going as I was before her first trip. By this point, I knew she was cheating, and no matter how much I tried to convince her, she wouldn't admit it. It hurt to see her throw away 14 years of marriage, but I couldn't do anything to stop it. Sarah didn't know that I had already contacted a lawyer. I secretly moved all our money into an account only in my name. I was ready to cancel our credit cards, phone service, and any other financial agreements we had together. She thought she was getting away with it. She thought she was being sneaky trying to cheat on her men, but this time I was ready. I talked to my lawyer about when to catch her, and he said to do it while she was away on her trip. But I decided to serve her at her office instead, so all her colleagues could witness it. I still remember the pitying looks from my co-workers at the party that night, thinking I was clueless about my wife's affair. But we'll see who's the fool. She had a trip planned for Wednesday, so I made sure she got the message when I discreetly handed it to her. She found a box at her job on Monday. The box had some scandalous photos from a movie in it. Those pics made it pretty clear she was fooling around with her boss. When she found out her partner was cheating with their employer, she decided to sue the company for breaking up their relationship. They showed evidence like the photos and details of their cheating during a work trip. They filed a lawsuit against the boss for going against the morals clause in their contract. The spouse and some colleagues signed papers to support the claim. On Monday morning, the main guy got a call from his wife Sarah, yelling and filling the room with her voice. "You selfish idiot, good morning sweetheart, what have you done now?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger. "You're so selfish, Sarah." "I'm just trying to make you see the truth," I replied bitterly. "You've been cheating on me for months, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Carl, I don't get what you're trying to say. Are you trying to replace me with him? Do you have a crush on him or something?" she yelled in surprise. "I can't believe you're accusing me of that." "Do you?" I demanded firmly. She burst out laughing and said, "Oh, that's a good one, you silly person. I don't love him, you know. I've always loved you. Trayvon is just helping me with my work, that's all. He doesn't mean anything to me." She continued in a softer tone, "We can work through this, okay? Don't do this to us, we don't need to get divorced." I just freaked out for a minute. "Babe. Let's talk about this, don't make any rash decisions. I'm on my way home now so we can sort this out. Don't bother Sarah, I don't want to see you. I've changed the lock so your key won't work. Please stay away from me and my life. There will be a restraining order against you and your boss. Let's talk, Carl, we can work through this. I know I messed up, but you. Hey, you can't just throw me out after all we've been through. I told you, Sarah, but you didn't listen and now you're gone. I hope you've learned your lesson. But Carl, I'll always love you. I'll call you back." "Hold on, Sarah, someone's telling you to leave. We'll talk later. Just remember, I love you." As I was about to say more, I heard noises on Sarah's end. A man's voice told her to go with him somewhere. "I think her management has caught wind of my lawsuit and is now interfering." The call ended. Out of nowhere, my marriage fell apart and I couldn't stop crying thinking about how much I loved her even though she was so cruel. It was hard to imagine life without her. I wanted to drown my sorrows in wine, but I knew it wouldn't help. Later on, I found out that Trayvon Jackson, a former athlete, had lost his job. He got transferred to Sarah's office after getting in trouble for sexual harassment at his old job. The CEO wanted to give him a second chance, but after the lawsuit, they decided to let him go. Sarah ended up getting fired from her job too. A few days ago, rumors started spreading about her cheating, and people got worried about how it would affect the company's reputation. When she tried to go into her house, a neighbor stepped in and called the cops. They knew about Sarah's restraining order, so they were gonna arrest her. To avoid drama, she reluctantly left the scene. My lawyer said our lawsuit was about her cheating, which made things worse. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that there was no proof of her cheating and that it must have been a misunderstanding. Man, me and Sarah had some serious issues. My lawyer dropped a bomb saying he wanted a paternity test because he wasn't sure if the baby was mine. Sarah lost it and even tried to smack my lawyer. I couldn't help but chuckle. I mean, we weren't even sure she was pregnant, but I knew her boss was messing around with her. I never wanted to have a kid with her, so if she was pregnant, it definitely wasn't mine. In the middle of our messy divorce, we couldn't agree on how to split our stuff and who would pay alimony. Husband was hell-bent on getting more money, so he held onto a scandalous video to put pressure on the wife's lawyer. The lawyer, feeling pretty confident, came back with an offer of only half the assets and asked for alimony. The couple didn't want to budge, so they decided to drag out the process. 2 weeks later, Sarah's lawyer hit us with a bombshell: she was pregnant and claimed I was the father. They wanted an even split of assets and ongoing alimony, or else they were ready to take it to court. Sarah's lawyer meant business. So, this chick got the restraining order lifted so she could go back to their place and grab her stuff with the cops there. She managed to snatch half of their cash and bounce within an hour, just like they agreed. 6 weeks later, she hit up Carl with a nicer vibe, trying to chat. She was all like, "I get that you're upset and going through a rough time. I'm cool with talking things out like adults, but my lawyer says I gotta keep my distance for now. Hey Sarah, I think we're running out of things to talk about and our relationship is going downhill. I can't ignore the pain you've caused me. Trust is super important and I'm trying to rebuild it. I know things are tough, but I still really care about you. I miss the bond we had and I want to fix things. Remember our love and think about our unborn child. As a dad, I want to be involved in their life. It's hard to admit, but I still have feelings for her. If my lawyer agrees, let's schedule a DNA test. I don't want to get your hopes up that we can fix this, but if the kid is mine, everything's gonna change. I gotta know," she said eagerly. "Oh, yes, honey. I just want a shot at making things right. We can still be a family. I may be older, but it won't matter if we're together. I promise to be the best mom and wife you've ever seen." I let out a sigh. "Okay, Sarah. I'll talk to my lawyer and sort everything out," I said. "Thank you, sweetie. You won't regret this. I really love you." As I hung up the phone, I realized how messed up this situation was. Man, that situation was messed up. I had to cut it off because she needed to realize there was no turning back. A week after finding out the kid wasn't mine, I finally told Sarah the truth. She was crushed and kept saying sorry over the phone. After that convo, I focused on my lawsuit against the firm, which ended with a fat settlement as long as I kept my wife's affair on the down low. My lawyer took a big chunk of the money, but I still had enough to get by. I snitched on the other 2 cheaters too. I was thinking about asking if the other chick was married, but I got tired of the whole situation and decided not to bother. When I got to court for the divorce finalization, I saw my ex. She was dressed in maternity clothes and her belly was huge. It looked like she had put on about 50 pounds. She walked shakily to her seat next to her lawyer, waving and smiling nervously at me. I just nodded and kept my eyes on the judge. The judge approved the divorce like we had planned. They only gave me 60% in the divorce settlement, no alimony. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Sarah. Herman left her. I always hated that guy, thought he was a good-for-nothing, reckless jerk. Now he's just a deadbeat dad. Even with their lawyer trying their best, they couldn't even find him. When the judge banged the gavel, our divorce was officially over. But no one was really happy. I loved my wife and was crushed by her death. I knew at my age and with all this sadness, finding love again might be impossible. Once I hit my 40s, I figured out that it's damn hard to find a real connection with a woman, even though I tried getting back into the dating game. Nothing clicked for me, and I had to come to terms with the fact that maybe I won't find happiness for the rest of my life. On the other hand, Sarah's life took a different path after her divorce. They sold their house and split the cash 60/40 as agreed in the settlement. This left her with enough money to move into a tiny apartment. But since she didn't have much education, her job options were limited, and she ended up working at a grocery store. Her parents tried to help her out with basic stuff like sweeping floors and cleaning bathrooms, but her eating habits went downhill. She went through a rough patch due to health issues and getting older. When I saw her a few months later, she just wasn't the same. I used to think she looked really good, but now she always looks sad. Her hair has some more gray in it, she's lost weight and doesn't have much muscle definition anymore. The wrinkles on her face are more pronounced now, making her look older. She looks way younger than she actually is. I never saw her smile. Turns out Sarah got herself a man about a year ago. Meanwhile, I'm still single and bitter. They don't live together, and her dude is older. They only go on dates every now and then. But from what I gather, their relationship is going strong. I don't hold any grudges against Sarah anymore, she's been through some tough times. I hope she finds someone who truly loves and trusts her. Divorces are never easy. Here's the scoop on the next story: she had deep feelings for him and called it a. Yo, this dude, whose name she ain't spilling, went through a messed up car crash where his wife died, but he walked away unscathed. He was feeling guilty and trying to deal with all the emotions. Chrissy said she just wanted to help him get through the sadness, but things got more serious between them. She could feel the sparks flying and the chemistry between them during their deep talks. She kept telling me how much she loved him and made promises. She eventually came back to me, but she made it clear that she would stay with this other guy for as long as he needed her. She promised to still be there for our kids and me. The guy was younger than her and she knew he would leave eventually, but for now she wanted to be there for him. This was a nightmare situation for any married man. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. I reacted like most guys would in that situation. I accused my wife of being immoral. Chrissy then took out her frustration on me. Me and Chrissy had a big fight because she was mad at me for my behavior. She said if I really loved her, I would just deal with the situation and remember our wedding vows where I promised to love, respect, and cherish her. Chrissy was obviously pissed off and not happy with me. I was so angry, but instead of blowing up, I decided to just drink to calm down. I even asked her how she would feel if I started looking for another woman, and she snapped back saying no one would want a guy like me. She called me an overweight, middle-aged man with thinning hair. Man, my wife threatened to mess me up if I tried to divorce her. I was so angry and didn't know what to do next. My head was all over the place with emotions, making it hard to think straight. Even though I knew it wasn't the best time to be stubborn, I just started drinking and letting out my frustration on Chrissy. In response, she packed a bag and told me she was leaving to stay with her boyfriend until I could handle the situation and chill out. After that, my memory gets fuzzy. Sitting on the bed, I thought about what Chrissy said and realized she was right about me. By the time I hit middle age, my hair was starting to thin out and I had packed on almost 20 kilograms. But no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't turn back the clock. I could do something about my appearance though, but first I needed to track down my kids. It was Saturday morning, so they should have been home. After a quick scan of the house, I realized they weren't there. I was about to call Chrissy's parents when I heard her car pulling up to the driveway. Our kids hopped out of the car and headed towards the house. As Chrissy walked in, I greeted her at the front door with a nod of approval. "You're sober," she said sternly. "Where were the kids?" I asked, matching her tone. "They were with me. I couldn't leave them with you." "Did you bring them to your boyfriend?" I hissed. "Ron, watch your mouth," she yelled, pointing out that they had already arrived, "unlike you and your terrible behavior. This man is actually caring, unlike yesterday. I wouldn't trust them, would you?" I agreed with her, but wondered why she didn't take the kids to her parents. "They weren't home," Chrissy said, walking past me and going upstairs. I followed her. She walked into our room and asked if she was gonna stay or run off with her boyfriend Ron. "Please stop acting like a child. I've already explained how things are gonna be and I don't want to argue about it anymore. The conversation is over and you can either accept it or not, it's up to you. Despite your stupid behavior, you're still important to me. Just remember, I'll be back once he doesn't need my help anymore. So, what do we do now in the meantime? I tried to stay calm. I'll pack some stuff. Stay with him for a few days until you chill out and come to terms with the situation. What about the kids though? I was hoping that would convince her to stay, but no luck. If you don't want to take care of them, just call my parents. I know they won't say no. Chrissy packed up another bag and left. My head was spinning, but I had to stay strong for the kids. I wasn't going to let Chrissy off the hook for cheating. After she left, I made sure the kids were okay. Once they got their assignments, I told them to start working right away, even though they complained at first. But their attitudes quickly changed when I said that once they were done, we could head to Grandma and Grandpa's house. The kids were thrilled because Chrissy's parents were their grandparents. They always loved going to visit because my father-in-law, Sam, helped my kids build go-karts. They had been working on the project for months and it looked like they were almost finished. Chris's parents, Sam and Mary, lived on a small farm about 15 minutes away from her house. Both of them were retired. Sam loved messing around and helping out the kids with their projects. Besides his love for farming, he also enjoyed fixing and designing all kinds of stuff. He had a big workshop where he did all his projects, even fixing cars. Whenever I could, I helped him become a certified mechanic at a Ford dealership. I wanted to talk to Chris's parents to know more about her partner, and most importantly. So basically, I wanted to talk to them about the current situation. I have a close bond with Sam and Mary. They're like my second parents since my real parents live far away. But I'm worried they might take Chrissy's side and that could ruin our relationship. As I checked on the kids doing their homework, I couldn't help but feel proud. Tom, who's 16 and a great football player, stood out the most. Kyle wasn't old enough to get a college scholarship. Sally, who was a year younger than him, was just your typical teenager who liked to push boundaries while still hitting the books. The youngest in the family, Kyle, was only 11 years old. Even though he hated being called Baby Chris, he couldn't shake the nickname. Kyle was a great surprise since Chrissy found out she was pregnant when they weren't planning on having any more kids. He's always been a cheerful and carefree kid, bringing joy to everyone around him. While the kids were upstairs, I brewed myself a cup of coffee and started making a list of stuff I had to get done. There was a ton of things on the list and I had no clue how much time I had to do it all. First thing I did was give my boss Bob Clarkson a call and fill him in. I've been working as a mechanic at the dealership since it first opened 23 years ago, and Bob's been my boss for 15 years. Not to brag, but I'm known as one of the top mechanics at the dealership. Bob understood my situation and shared that his own son went through a rough divorce the year before. The situation got really bad when Bob's ex-wife Carol accused their son of being mean to their daughter. I expressed my shock at Carol's behavior, and Bob totally agreed. He said they were worried Gary would get arrested any day because those accusations are really serious and hard to prove wrong. Luckily, Gary's ex-mother-in-law ended up supporting him. Carol probably thought accusing Gary of mistreating her daughter would get him in trouble for sure. Gary is known as a real jerk, but Beth totally surprised everyone by showing she's got some sense of fairness. She didn't waste any time. She picked up her granddaughter from school and took her to the doc to make sure she wasn't being mistreated. The doc said the kid was fine, which made Bob go straight to the cops and threaten to snitch on his own daughter if they charged Gary. He even warned Carol that if she kept pushing the case, she'd regret it. Man, when Beth spilled the beans about her drug problems in court, putting her daughter at risk, I was just blown away by how far some women will go to get what they want. Props to Beth for being so determined. If you need help, just hit me up. Ron Bob said he'll try his best to help out. I had 12 personal days and 6 weeks of vacation saved up, so I asked for a day off next week. Bob quickly approved it and even offered to compromise if I wanted to use all my personal days. Going on vacation together is what I finally did. There's another way I can help you out, he said. It's easy, just hire a lawyer like my son did. He was really helpful with Carol's case, and as a result, Gary got primary custody of their daughter, kept the house, and now Carol has to pay child support. The lawyer's name is Dwight Tucker. I think I have his number somewhere. My son's divorce got more and more stressful, so we started using lawyers more often, and Mr. Tucker was the only one we used. I remembered that after Bob quickly searched, he found Dwight Tucker's business card. I immediately called his office number. I didn't think anyone would be there on a Saturday, so I decided to leave a message. To my surprise, Mr. Tucker was there and his secretary told me he had a free appointment due to a cancellation. I told the kids I had to go for a bit and they better behave. I hurried to his office and got there in just 20 minutes. So, there's this guy who looked about 30, he was a total babe, a bit shorter than me, had these deep blue eyes and a friendly smile. Dwight definitely caught the attention of the lady jurors. "What's up? How can I help you?" he asked as soon as I sat down. I felt my cheeks heat up with embarrassment and anger as I spilled the beans that my wife had cheated on me with some young dude the day before. I quickly told him what had happened, and Dwight sat there taking notes, shaking his head in disbelief when I mentioned that my wife still loves me but plans to keep going with the story. He cut me off. "Let me explain." Dwight's face got serious. "Is your wife saying she loves you, but you still plan on messing around with another guy?" I felt so embarrassed, my face turned red. I just nodded. Please keep going," Dwight pushed. I told him how unhappy Christy was, why I turned down her offer, and reluctantly confessed that in the heat of the moment, I called her a nasty name. I remembered Christy laughing when I asked how she would react if I started seeing another woman. Man, it was so messed up and embarrassing for me to admit how Christy treated me like garbage, saying I'd never find another woman and even threatening to ruin me if I tried to leave her. Dwight asked in disbelief, "Did she really say all that?" I replied, "No offense, Mr. Fremont, but your wife is either heartless as hell or seriously screwed up in the head." I sighed, feeling torn about the situation. "It's okay," I said, finally facing the reality of his words. I went on to describe how, after a fight, she dropped off the kids at her boyfriend's house for the night. Dwight's face said it all when he looked up, grinned, and went back to what he was doing. Then came the big question, "What's the plan?" "What do you want?" he asked, folding his hands in front of him. After thinking for a bit, I told him straight up, "I can't keep living like this. I don't know if I can handle this cheating anymore. I'm scared of getting cleaned out in a divorce and not seeing my kids." Dwight just shook his head. "Don't stress, I'll do my best to minimize the damage she can do. In the worst-case scenario, you'll probably still keep at least half of your stuff. Just remember, the courts don't care about cheating spouses." "Does this mean I'll have to pay my ex-wife alimony and maintenance?" I asked, feeling down. Despite Dwight's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that things would be tough. Dwight looked over his papers and said, "Yeah, there's a chance we might get screwed over, so we need to be proactive." Right away, you were all like, my wife bounced and took the kids, leaving them solo, which is a big deal in the eyes of the law. "You're trying to get custody of the kids, so we can try to get a restraining order against your wife to let you stay in the house and keep custody of the kids for now. The more time you spend with the kids, the better your chances of getting primary custody. If we win, you might not have to pay child support." "Hey, does your wife work?" Dwight asked. "Yep, she works part-time at the hospital," I replied. "She works on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays." "Maybe that's where she met her new man," Dwight said, curious about how much she makes. I told him she makes about $25,000 a year, while I bring in over $80,000. Then Dwight got real serious and asked, "Do you still love her? Do you want to keep things going?" I looked down, froze for a bit, and when I finally looked up, tears started to fall. "Sure," I thanked them and then I spilled the beans. "I still give a damn about her, but I can't overlook the fact that she messed up big time. She completely disrespected our marriage and broke all her promises. I'm at my breaking point, I want to divorce her." Dwight flipped to a new page in his notebook and asked me what kind of resources I had. Before answering, I thought about it and figured we had around $35,000 in checking, $44,000 in savings, and a $21,000 CD with interest. I also mentioned that I had I had $150,000 in my bank account. Chris had less saved in her retirement plan even though she worked at the hospital for a shorter time. But she had better benefits than me. Our company had really good medical care, so we used that for our family. We talked about our assets, like owning 2 cars and a new house we just bought with a big loan. Dwight seemed ready for anything, like a soldier getting ready for battle. "The goal is, hey, so I need you to take half of your savings and put it in another account with your name on it. Just know that I can't touch those accounts without Chris's permission. Don't stress, Dwight said, it's all good. Take out $3,750 from savings to cover your house expenses. Cancel any joint credit cards and use the shared account to pay them off. Maybe think about getting a new credit card just in your name. I already have one, so no worries. I had this credit card from before I got hitched, but I hardly ever use it since our shared card gives us cashback perks. I told Dwight we didn't need a new card and he quickly wrote down some instructions on a notepad and passed it to me. He told me to go to his secretary and have her call Taylor Locksmith to change all the locks in our place. Once that's done, I should come back and we'll talk about what's next. I told the secretary, who wasted no time and got in touch with Taylor Locksmith right away. Alright, so get this. We were supposed to go see Dwight at noon, but when I got back to his office, he was just wrapping up a phone call. He said, "Looks like we lucked out." The secretary said if we turn in the paperwork today, Judge Johnson will be the one handling our case. I was like, why is that such a big deal? And Dwight just grinned and told me that Judge Johnson can't stand cheaters. He's one of those Bible Belt judges who's totally against affairs, no matter who's involved. Trust me, having him on our case is a major win. If it wasn't for Judge Johnson being a friend of my dad, I might have had to work harder to get the result we wanted. But I'm sure we would have still pulled it off. Luckily, I can call him at home without any worries. Dwight came forward and shook my hand, which I appreciated. As I was leaving, Dwight insisted that I keep doing my banking stuff and he promised to get a restraining order against my wife right away. She can't come near me or our home within 500 feet. So, your kids are chilling with her Newman now. Just so you know, she ditched them with him. This detail will come in handy when we go to court to get a restraining order. By Friday, I'll have handed your wife the divorce papers. But before that, you better make sure you're the main parent in charge. Then, we'll just have to wait and see what your wife does. Ever since Chrissy dropped her bombshell, I finally feel like I'm getting my life back. So, I was at the bank and managed to get a cash receipt for my share of the money and closed the Loon joint credit card. They told me there was a $537 debt on the card, so I just paid it off with some money from my bank account. I also made a $2,600 payment on my mortgage. After that, I didn't have much left in my checking account. So, I went to another bank on the next street and opened a checking and savings account in just my name using cash. After finishing up, I got home and found my kids glued to the TV. I quickly rounded them up and drove over to my mother-in-law's place. I saw Sam coming out of his workshop, waving at us before disappearing around the house. The kids quickly got out of the car and followed their grandpa inside. Mary gave me a kiss on the cheek before Sam joined us after cleaning up. I hesitated to break the news, feeling a lump in my stomach. "I'm sorry, but I have to tell you something," I started, my voice trembling. "Chrissy is having an. Me and my husband are getting a divorce." Sam looked at me in shock. "Chrissy would never do that," he insisted. I whispered through my tears, "That's what she told me." Just then, the back door opened and the kids came in. "Stay outside for a bit," I ordered. "Why?" Tom asked. "Just listen to me," I snapped back. Tom quickly led his siblings outside. Out there, Mary was speechless when she heard the news. "Did she tell you?" "Wait," she asked me, "really?" I replied, telling her all about what happened last night. I spilled all the juicy details, even mentioning how Chrissy threatened to destroy me if I broke up with her. I also mentioned her doubts that any other woman would want me. They were shocked and pissed off by this revelation. "I still can't believe it," he said, reaching for his phone to call Chrissy. He put it on speaker and placed it on the coffee table, waiting for her to pick up. "Hey Daddy," Chrissy said with a smile, "what's up? How can I help you?" Sam wasted no time and got straight to the point. "Ron told me you're cheating, is it true?" Chrissy looked concerned and asked, "What exactly did Ron say?" Sam replied, "He said you're with another man in a romantic way." Chrissy tried to explain, "I'm just trying to help them through a tough time, Dad." Sam's face turned red with anger and he asked, "Are you close to him or not?" Chrissy responded, "We were really good friends. I still have feelings for Ron, I just can't leave him. He means a lot to me too." I was shocked by Sam's response. Chrissy was always Daddy's girl and I thought he would protect her. Sam's voice shook as he spoke. Chrissy, I never thought our daughter would act like that. Dad, please, she managed to say before Sam cut her off. The phone rang again and Mary went to answer it. Leave it, Sam ordered, but Mary ignored him and angrily grabbed the phone. Sam snatched the phone from her and chucked it into the fireplace. I told her to leave it alone. Mary took a step back, shocked, as he yelled. I was also surprised by his sudden outburst. The room fell silent as Sam and Mary tried to figure out what had just happened. Eventually, Sam came over and gave me a hug. I'm speechless. I can't believe his daughter treated you like that. We'll support you in any way we can. We'll do whatever it takes to help you get through this. We'll always be here for you and the kids. I'll have a talk with our. Hey, I'll catch up with my daughter later and fill you in on what happened. I'm too mad to talk to her right now. I had to leave to meet the locksmith at home after getting the kids in the car. I said goodbye to Sam and Mary and invited them to dinner to talk about the situation. Sally started crying on the way home, asking if you and Em are getting divorced. I asked where she heard that, and Tom defiantly pointed to her brother. Tom looked up and admitted, I snuck into the house and listened. I knew it was bad. I really wasn't expecting it to be like this. Man, that sucks. I sighed, knowing they needed to hear the truth. Unfortunately, your mom and I are splitting up, I said softly. But why? Kyle asked, tears welling up in his eyes. Your mom has feelings for someone else, I said simply. So, you're saying she's cheating? Sally cried. I can't stand her. She's a terrible person. Sally, don't talk about your mom like that, I said, even though I felt as angry as a volcano inside. Chrissy quickly got new locks put in after the locksmiths drove off. She stormed out to the driveway 10 minutes later yelling, You spilled the beans to my parents, didn't you? Tears started rolling down her cheeks as she said, I thought you cared about me. I sadly responded, I love you with all my heart, but I can't handle the thought of you with someone else. It hurt a lot when you said those hurtful words, acting like you were doing me a favor by staying with me. I don't need to be pitied. Not only did you cheat on me, but you also threatened to destroy me. You say you love me, Chrissy, but you seriously need to think about how you're acting. People who actually love each other don't behave like that. And as for telling your parents, if you really think you're doing the right thing, does it even matter if people find out? Chrissy looked shocked when I confronted her. I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to say those things. You called me cruel, which really hurt and offended me. It's pretty insulting to hear those kinds of statements from you, especially since you promised to love, honor, and cherish me if you truly meant it. If you really gave a damn about me, you'd get where I'm coming from and have my back in this tough situation. I'm not ditching you for him, I just care about him and want to help out. He's younger than me and will leave eventually. It's important to handle this with kindness and understanding. And if you're gonna bring up our wedding vows, don't forget the part where you promised to put me above everyone else. Keep in mind, a married woman doesn't go sleeping around with younger guys just because she feels bad for them. Plus, I've come to terms with it. You ended up being a brat and I don't want you in my life anymore. It's up to you to decide if you want to accept that or not. Chrissy hesitated for a moment before getting all arrogant again. She was breathing heavily, trying to come up with ways to persuade me to accept the situation. At that moment, I wished I didn't love her, but my feelings for her were still strong. Christy responded, Listen, Ron, stop acting like a kid. Seriously, I'm your wife, don't you recognize me? I love you, but I need to wait until this guy is better. I felt so let down. I've had enough. I used to love you, but now I hate you. I'm sorry, Chrissy, but I don't know who you are. My real wife, the mother of my kids, she was always loyal and loving. Now you're like a stranger to me. I can't help but wonder if this is just another one of your flings. I can't trust you anymore. Who knows how many other people you've been with? Chris got all wide-eyed and red-faced with anger, clearly gearing up to let it all out. He's the first person I've been close to since we got married. He's hurting bad and I want to be there for him, whether you like it or not. But I'm not okay with it and I'll never be. And because I don't trust you, I'm gonna do a DNA test on our kids to see who their daddy really is. Chrissy said all this in a real aggressive way, showing how mad she was. It seems like you're trying to stir up some trouble here. Remember what I told you about the consequences if you go ahead and get married. I'd rather be broke and single than shack up with a woman who's got no morals. I saw my wife on the porch and just shook my head in disappointment. It was hard to find any solace in the fact that she seemed clueless about the challenges ahead. She acted like she could do whatever she wanted without any consequences, but I was starting to think otherwise. The sheriff's car pulled up and the deputy hopped out to talk to Chrissy. "Are you Christine Jameson?" the deputy asked. "Yeah, that's me," Chrissy replied, looking confused. "Ma'am, this is a restraining order," the deputy said, handing her the court document. "It says you can't go inside this house and have to stay 500 feet away from it. You get that?" "But it's my house." Chrissy protested, "All my stuff is in there." "I'm giving you 15 minutes to pack up your things," the deputy said, giving me a look. "Hey, do you mind if I take a stroll around the yard with the kids?" Chrissy got all worked up and was like, "I want to see my kids." She was getting pretty mad. The deputy got worried as things escalated, so they got a restraining order to keep the kids safe from her. Chrissy turned around, fuming, and accused, "You're trying to take my kids from me." I told her, "No, Chrissy, you brought this on yourself. I told the court that you left your home and kids. Were you hooking up with your men when I wasn't around?" "I haven't left the house and he seems like a good guy." Chrissy yelled that he's the one she's trying to help. If he's so great, why not just move in with him and be with him forever? Or is he just using you for some fun? I told the kids that their mom was going to meet a new boyfriend, but they could still say goodbye. Saying goodbye to her before she left, I was not happy about seeing Chrissy and the kids. Kyle was crying as I walked them up to the front yard. He threw himself into his mom's arms, crying and begging her to stay. Christy yelled out, "Please Ron, do you understand how this is messing with the kids?" Despite my anger, I held back and told her, "Don't drag the kids into this. I didn't do anything with the kids. You're the one who took them to your lover's place and left them there while you were getting cozy." I called myself out for getting all pissed off when Chrissy was about to start bawling. "Ron, please understand that I can't just up and leave him." "Chrissy, I'm pretty sure you had plenty of time to mull things over before our chat yesterday. I get that you can't ditch him, so you're sticking with him. But in doing that, you've pretty much ditched your hubby, kids, and home. It's time for us to do the same to you." I shot back, saying you never thought about the consequences of your choice. "I hope you're ready." Tom was fuming when he saw the consequences of his actions. He stared in shock at his mother, wondering why she did what she did. Chrissy tried to explain herself, but Tom could see right through her. Sally, on the other hand, couldn't hold back her anger. She called her mother selfish and heartless, trying to defuse the situation. I had to intervene to stop my daughter from attacking Chrissy. I tried to apologize, but Sally wouldn't accept it. Chrissy was caught off guard and ended up on the floor, crying. I didn't mean for this to happen. Man, I was totally shocked by what my daughter did. Sally and Chrissy have been butting heads a lot lately. I figured it was just a typical teenage phase that Sally would grow out of. All I could do was hope that Chrissy wouldn't completely ruin their relationship. While I was trying to calm down Sally, Chrissy hopped in her car and took off. I saw her freaking out and banging on the steering wheel. Kyle ran after the car, begging her not to leave. Thankfully, Tom was able to catch him and bring him back with the help of the deputy. "So, Mr. Jameson looked at me all sympathetically. I was really sorry about what you had to deal with." Later that evening, Sam and Mary came over for dinner. I was gonna grill some burgers and make a salad, but Mary took over the kitchen and whipped up her famous mac and cheese. The kids were thrilled. While Mary was cooking, Sam and I chilled in the living room with a couple of beers. Sam was clearly pissed about what his daughter was up to. I told him about why I got that restraining order after Chrissy left the kids alone at her place. When Sam heard about Chrissy's decision, he was really upset. I asked Mary how the talk with Chrissy went, hoping for some good news. Sam confessed that it was awful, even though Mary tried to talk sense into her. Mary got mad and said Chrissy is convinced she's right and everyone else is wrong. She thinks we're awful people. I've never seen her so angry. I ended the conversation by telling Chrissy not to contact us anymore. I made it clear to Chrissy that I don't want to hear from her. I would totally rat her out if it went to court, so things got awkward at dinner. But hey, at least Sam invited the kids over to practice some kindness the next day. Tom and Kyle were happy about that, it gave them a break from the tension. Sally, on the other hand, sat there with a sour face, not touching her food. I just ignored her, figuring she was hurting too. Then, out of nowhere, Chrissy got served divorce papers at the hospital on Friday. My coworkers told me that she totally lost it. She went off on the person who brought her the papers and even threatened to ruin me. Because of all that drama, she got sent home to her boyfriend. Dwight knew Chris's lawyer, Amber Wright, and had bumped into her a few times. Despite acting all sure of herself, Dwight didn't think she was as skilled as she said she was. When Judge Johnson tried to lift the restraining order, he didn't really care and just said the kids were fine. So, he agreed to change the order and let Chrissy come visit. The house was being watched, but her boyfriend wasn't allowed within 500 feet of the house at any time. He told her that if she broke this rule, he would stop her from visiting. Chrissy was fine with the changes. Personally, I didn't care because I wanted the kids to see their mom. But Chris's happiness didn't last long. The judge told her she had to start paying child support. This meant she had to go back to work full-time, despite her outburst in the hospital. I was sure about it. They said they'd take her back on as a full-time nurse since they always need them. She's a pro at what she does. After the hearing, they sent me the DNA test results in the mail. It took me ages to pluck up the courage to open it. When I finally did, my heart skipped a beat with happiness for the first time since this whole ordeal started. The results confirmed that my kids are definitely mine. I read the report over and over to make sure it was right. Couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. I would definitely step up if the DNA test showed my kids were mine. It hit me all of a sudden that my love for them would never waver, no matter what. For a brief moment, I thought about forgiving everything if Christy broke things off with her new man and came back for the kids. But after some thought, I realized it wouldn't be good for them in the long run. So, I decided to use all my vacation days and personal time to be with the kids at home. After the trip ended, Chris's parents took over. Sam and Mary weren't talking to their daughter. Sam said he tried calling her many times a day for a week before he decided to block her number. The visitation agreement was left to Christy and me, so our lawyers will deal with it. In the end, we agreed that Christy can come visit on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 to 7 p.m. Mary offered to watch the visits, but I wanted to go to the first one. I made sure that Christy and Mary understood the rules. Christy showed up on the first Monday, parked her car on the street, and got out. I didn't recognize the car, but I knew it was her boyfriend's. Christy hesitantly walked up to the house, smiling awkwardly. "Hello, Ron, how are you?" she greeted me, then turned to her mom. "It's nice to see you." I confronted her. "Christy, you need to leave. The judge was clear that your boyfriend can't come in." "Yo, like, within 500 feet of this house, wait, he just brought me here," she complained. "Chrissy, are you dumb?" I was so mad. The judge made everything crystal clear. "No lovers, tell that jerk to bounce, and I ain't snitching to the judge about it." Chrissy quickly nodded and went back to the car, but then I had a sneaky idea. I stepped out at an angle and grabbed a pen from my pocket while Chrissy was distracted chatting with her boyfriend. I slyly wrote down the license plate number when the car drove off. I casually strolled back to the porch. Christy chuckled and said she'd come get me. She told me to tell him to meet me on the street because she didn't want him near the house. I replied firmly, "Ron, I'm sick of how you treat me." You didn't have to take money from her bank account or cancel my credit card. I defended myself, saying I didn't steal anything. I used the money from the checking account to pay off a credit card and 2 mortgage payments. I made sure the kids had somewhere to stay while we sorted things out. I didn't want to leave them hanging. "Don't mess up my credit card charges because of you and your boyfriend Chris." He was furious and proud, insisting there was no affair and he wasn't her boyfriend. I was about to say something when Mary suddenly stood up and slapped Chrissy in the face. The sudden outburst shocked both Chrissy and me. Chrissy took a step back and looked at her mother in surprise. "Chrissy, if you disrespect Ron again, I won't hesitate to take action. If you want to see the kids, they're in the living room. I need to talk to Ron first. I'll come with you, but just so you know, if you mess up once, I'll kick you out of this place," Mary warned. Chrissy nodded seriously and went inside. "Ron, I'm so sorry that my daughter acts this way," Mary said sympathetically. "Thanks for having my back," I replied graciously. 2 weeks after the first court hearing, the restraining order was lifted, just like Dwight said it would be. I showed that I was the one taking care of things and was allowed to stay in the house while Chrissy kept seeing her boyfriend. And don't forget about Chrissy's alimony payments. She was still allowed to see the kids on her own, but the judge said she couldn't bring them to her boyfriend's place or have him around when she talked to them. After waiting 4 months, we finally had our first court session to finalize the divorce. Before our lawyers could say anything, Judge Johnson asked if Chris and I had talked to them. Both lawyers agreed we hadn't, so the judge set up 8 counseling sessions for us. Neither Chrissy nor I had a problem with that. I thought those sessions were a total waste of time, but I didn't want to piss off the judge. I couldn't believe that Chris still thought she could convince me or the therapist that her behavior was justified. My first session with therapist Patterson dragged on for almost an hour, just like I knew it would. Chris tried to justify her actions by saying they were in line with Christian values. She kept going on, and the therapist looked shocked. I was taken aback by Chris's arrogance. The next week, the therapist started. So, I was chatting with Christy and she starts talking about this made-up scenario where I get involved with another woman. I was getting all defensive, thinking she was gonna come at me for being less of a man, but she didn't go off on me like I expected. Instead, she kind of brushed it off. Honestly, her words didn't really mean much to me at the time. I was going through a messy divorce and it was changing me. It might sound cocky, but when someone you care about tells you you're not good enough, it lights a fire under you to prove them wrong. That's why I eventually decided to get a new hairstyle. So I had this hair transplant surgery that wasn't too intense, but it still set me back $4,000. I was debating whether or not to go through with it, worried about what people would say. But I was on vacation, so I said screw it and went for it. They basically took hair from the back of my head and moved it to the front. I had to stay inside for most of the first week, and my kids were totally confused by my new look, asking a bunch of questions. I just told them it was a minor medical thing. After about 10 days, I started to look like myself again. Once I started feeling like my old self again and my hair started growing back, everything was finally fixed. I started running, but at first I could only go half a mile before my lungs and legs gave out. With determination, I was able to increase my distance to 5 miles. I also started hitting the gym and revamping our family's meals, focusing on healthier choices. The kids weren't too happy at first, missing their fast food, cookies, ice cream, and pizza. But I found some delicious and nutritious recipes online to try out. They ended up enjoying it when I made them. I totally caught my family off guard with some new grub that was bomb. Sure, not all my cooking experiments turned out as planned, but we just laughed it off, chucked and made some sandwiches instead. Turns out, my kids actually had a blast helping me out in the kitchen, making it a special bonding thing for us. Even with the pain from Chris's betrayal still hanging around, I managed to bounce back and feel good about myself again. Stepping back into my job gave me the confidence boost I needed. When I finally made it back to the office, I walked over to the front desk to see what my schedule was looking like. Trudy, the receptionist, gave me a weird look when she saw me. I thought she was gonna say something about my new hairdo, but she didn't. "Welcome back, Ron," she said, checking me out. "You look different. What's changed?" I felt myself getting a little red. "Oh, I've been on a diet. I've lost 18 pounds so far, and I'm hoping to lose 5 more, I told her. Trudy laughed and nodded. "It suits you well. If I wasn't married, I'd be pretty interested in you," she said. "Thanks for boosting my confidence. I have low self-esteem because my wife sees me as a boring old guy and she's cheating on me. I tried to talk things out, but it didn't help. Now everyone at work knows about my situation." Trudy was shocked when she heard about it. "Chrissy probably doesn't get it or is just clueless. Ron, you're a great guy and there are plenty of women out there who would love to be with you. Don't let Chris's words bring you down." Getting that compliment totally made my day and boosted my self-esteem big time. It was the best thing that happened to me in a while and made me feel like a champ once again. Then, the therapist asked Chrissy how she would react if Ron confessed to cheating on her. I thought she would throw me under the bus, but to my surprise, she didn't. I could tell she was seeing me in a new light and wasn't judging me based on my looks anymore. It gave my self-esteem another boost. I sat there, patiently waiting for Chrissy to answer, and it was obvious that she was struggling to find the right words. She couldn't just tell me to stop seeing another woman if she was seeing another guy. If he had actually tried to help her during a tough time, she said I might have been able to handle it. I raised an eyebrow in curiosity. What if I told her I love her and enjoy being intimate with her? I asked. Chrissy was firm in her stance. I would have agreed anyway, but only if you promised to take care of me and the kids. The conversation continued in the same way, with attempts to help Chai understand. Chrissy was being stubborn and it was clear that these meetings weren't doing anything. She was just using them to stick to her guns. I knew she wouldn't admit she was wrong. The initial shock of Chris's behavior had worn off and I could see that love, if not valued, starts to fade. By the third week, everything had changed. She was mostly just listening, but her actions showed that something was different. Chrissy seemed distant now, politely disagreeing but sympathetically. Yo, I've been peeping every little thing she does to show she's into me. Like, she still steals glances when she thinks I'm not watching. Meanwhile, I've been hitting the gym and dropping a few pounds. Spent more time outside and got a killer tan. Few months before therapy started, I started feeling bored at work. I've always had a thing for fixing up cars, not just the engines but the whole body too. Been restoring old school rides since I was 14 and I love it. Wanted to start my own business cause it's what I enjoy. I was working, but I wanted to have more time to hang out with my kids. After talking it over with Sam, he agreed to help out. I wanted to open my own store and build a successful business, but I knew I couldn't just quit my job without a plan. I didn't have the money to support myself until the business took off. Before I could really get my business going, I had to start somewhere. Luckily, Sam let me use his workshop in the industrial area near his farm. There was enough space for both of us. So there was this workshop that used to be just a shed. Sam even offered to let me rent a piece of land by the road if my business did well. I checked out the dealership setup and saw that they could handle more products than I thought. They did some work there, but most of it was outsourced. Knowing this, I decided to cut down on the tools and equipment I needed. One thing I definitely needed was a paint booth, and Sam not only gave the green light for it but also helped me set it up. To cover the costs, I borrowed some cash from Sam by dipping into our joint savings account. I also started working part-time on weekends and evenings. Surprisingly, the kids loved watching or helping out, making it a hit. I felt great showing Tom the ropes and even Sally joined in, getting her hands dirty and boasting about her engine rebuilding and Corvette painting skills. Her popularity soared at school thanks to her newfound talents. When people started talking about how good I am at teaching, I started thinking about turning my side hustle into a full-on business. The decision was made when I was asked to work on the weekend to catch up on work, but I had to say no because I already had other clients. When I told Bob I couldn't work because of my business, I knew I was risking my job. I asked Bob if he had a minute and he said yes, so I went into his office. He said he was happy I was working this weekend and mentioned that we had 44 cars coming in on Friday. Yo, so this shipment's coming in and we gotta check it out and send it out by the end of the month. My heart dropped when I heard this news. A lot of people don't even know that factories give dealerships extra perks. Like, if a dealership sells a certain number of cars each month, they get a discount on the invoice from the manufacturer. For example, they could get a $150 discount per car if they sell 300 cars in a month, saving them $45,000. But if they fall short and only sell 299 cars, they miss out on that discount. Not getting a discount is really stressing me out. That's the issue, Bob, I said as I felt sweat dripping down my back. I won't be able to work this weekend because I started my own business on weekends and need to take care of it. I'm sorry, Ron, Bob said harshly, but if you can't work this weekend, I might have to let you go. I get it, Bob, I responded with a sigh. I just hope there are no hard feelings. I'm trying to build my own business so I can spend more time with my kids and save for college. I'll clean out my locker, I added. I don't want to lose you, Ron, Bob said sadly. Tell me about your business. Where are you and what are you doing? I told him I had started a business on my father-in-law's land and listed the equipment and tools I had. In fact, I was ready to handle all kinds of car repairs, including bodywork. "Go grab some coffee and come back," Bob instructed, reaching for his phone. I turned down the coffee offer and instead packed everything in a box and put it in the locker, losing that job. I realized that I wouldn't have many job options in the near future, so I took the kids off my health insurance and put them on Chris's instead. But even with these changes, I still made sure to get everything done on schedule. The company was doing really well and there were more chances for me than I knew what to do with. As I was walking down the hall, Bob called me into his office and offered me something interesting. "I've got a deal for you, Ron," he said eagerly. "If you work this weekend, we'll cover any losses from unhappy customers." "Cool, right?" I was like, no way am I gonna risk my client's trust, but then Bob butted in and was all like, "Hold up, I'm not finished yet." He passed me a contract to work as an independent contractor and made it clear that I had to work that weekend. He thought I could convince my clients to wait a bit for their stuff to be done. If I could pull it off and pass the inspection, I'd get hired as an independent contractor doing bodywork. I was pretty shocked by the suggestion, but I ended up agreeing. After that weekend, I started working full-time at my job. I used to help out at the shop every now and then, and when I had some free time, Sam started helping me out part-time. Mary agreed to take care of the bookkeeping, and with their help, I started making more money than ever at the dealership. The only thing that was still causing problems in my life was my marriage. After the 4th counseling session, I thought about ending it for good. I got to a point where I didn't even care about Chris's new partner, or what my wife was up to. Being with someone else still got to me. By our 5th session, I was thinking about it less. I decided to take the bold move and confront her. I'm hoping that meeting Christy in person and standing up to her mean comments about my looks will finally put an end to her useless therapy sessions. When she asked if I had anything to say, I snapped, "Chrissy, I've realized you're not just selfish, but also cruel." I said firmly, "How could you say such hurtful things? Someone, do you really say you love me? You've hurt me so bad that I don't think I'll ever get over it," I said angrily. "I'm gonna go." "I'm sorry," she cried. "I feel so ashamed for saying those things. I wish I could go back in time. I do love you, but not enough to leave my boyfriend." "Save your apologies for yourself, because you're gonna need them more than I do," I replied. Chrissy started crying hysterically and no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't calm her down. Eventually, the session ended and we were done. I was told to do homework before our next meeting and I got annoyed because I was starting to think these meetings were pointless. The homework was to answer a bunch of questions. Some were deep, like about our relationships with our parents and personal lives, but others were random, like asking about my favorite foods and what kind of car I drive. One question got me thinking though. After the last session I stayed up all night working on the questionnaire. I put that aside when one question caught my attention the next day. I honestly told my therapist that I wanted to be a better husband so my wife wouldn't stop loving me. We turned in the papers for the next session without even checking them. Instead, the therapist asked if we had any questions or topics to talk about. Without thinking twice, I said I wanted to ask Christy something before turning to talk to my estranged wife Chrissy. "It seems like we've reached a stalemate in these meetings, you're so stubborn. So, I've been seeing this therapist with my partner Bruce Hartman, but it's not really helping us work things out. I think it might be time to just call it quits and get a divorce." When I mentioned this to Chrissy, she was all like, "How do you even know his name?" Turns out I saw his driver's license and figured it out from there. But honestly, I'm not even mad enough to want revenge or talk to him. I'm just over all the emotional drama. I'm dead set on moving forward in this situation. Chrissy was looking at me with such sadness. I really wanted to comfort her, but I knew that just giving her a hug wouldn't solve the bigger issues. "I get that your counsel wasn't happy with the settlement offers I made, so I told my lawyer to look into other options. I'm willing to see the kids more often and pay thousands of dollars in alimony every month for 3 years. My main aim is to wrap up this case once and for all." I told Chrissy about the cost and watched her closely, waiting for a response. But all I saw was sadness in her eyes. She made it clear she wasn't gonna break up with Bruce. I couldn't believe my wife was cheating on me. That's when I knew I had to leave. Your words hurt, but I'll probably never forget them. Eventually, I started to heal and move on. I'm trying to improve myself and I don't see myself as the person you turned down when you started dating Bruce. I've even started dating again now that her divorce is almost done. You can stay with your new partner as long as you want, but I think it's time to break up so you can fix things with the kids. Chrissy couldn't hold back her tears anymore and quickly left the room. I was shocked by how Chrissy looked. After a while, she pulled herself together and said she wanted to be alone. During our sessions, I reluctantly agreed to Chrissy talking about her problems. At first, I was so angry and filled with hate, but eventually, I just couldn't be bothered anymore. This whole situation didn't just affect me, but also Chrissy, her parents, and most importantly, our kids. When it was time for our last meeting, I just wanted it to be over. I was glad Chrissy wasn't there and that we wouldn't have to meet anymore. Ron, I want to thank you for putting up with us during our sessions and I'm sorry to hear that you're going through a tough time after our last chat. Hey Chrissy, the therapist was like, I think I get why your wife did that. I was waiting on the edge of my seat, eager for him to spill the tea. Finally, it clicked why Christine called it quits on her marriage. Remember that assignment I gave you? He asked. I just nodded, realizing I hadn't really been listening to him and brushed it off as unimportant. During our sessions, he whipped out 2 sheets of paper from his folder and was shocked at how we both answered a certain question. The question was about what we would do. Imagine if we had the chance to change things. Remember when he asked? I nodded, thinking about how I had said I wanted to be a better husband so my wife would still love me. Chrissy's reaction was awful when she got your answer. She cried like never before. It took me ages to calm her down because I didn't know what to do or say. Ron, your wife has always loved you, but she's still hooked up with Bruce. He told me, looking serious, then sighed. Chrissy said she's going through a midlife crisis. Her kids are getting older. She felt like time was running out. I think she's always been a good and caring person. Then she met Bruce, who really needed her help. She confused her desire to feel young again with love, and thought Bruce just needed forgiveness after losing his wife. But that's no excuse, he argued. She's still seeing Bruce. Wait, that can't be right, I said, shocked. Why didn't Chrissy tell me about this? Now I'm sure that she will. Bruce left town the day Chrissy found out you were planning to divorce. Even though she thought she had already lost you, I knew this wouldn't change my mind. We've been through too much to go back. My life was finally on the right path and I was ready to keep moving forward. Trust was broken and I didn't want to live in uncertainty. Most importantly, I wanted the kids to be able to see their mom again. Since this whole mess started, Sally's. My kids' grades have been totally tanking lately, and I think it's because she's still mad at her mom. Kyle's been all moody and distant, causing trouble at school. He's lost that happy-go-lucky vibe, thanks to Chris's nonsense. Tom, on the other hand, seems to be handling things the best out of all 3 kids. He's staying cool and collected, not showing any signs of being pissed off. But whenever his mom comes up, he dodges the topic. Maybe I'm reading this all wrong, though. Maybe he's freaking out more than the other kids, I really don't know. Oh, and one more thing, Ron, she said, handing me another piece of paper. This is Chris's answer to the question about how she's changed. She said if she could do things over, she never would have met Bruce Hartman. Chrissy got divorced and they agreed she'd see the kids on Wednesdays and Fridays. I used to take the kids out for dinner on Fridays before Chrissy showed up. Our talks were awkward at first. Man, that was a weird situation. We were having lunch with the kids one night when Chrissy dropped a bomb on me and asked if she could crash at my place. I politely turned her down, saying the spare bed wasn't great and she should just go home. I made it clear I didn't want to be in the same room as her again. Turns out Bruce H. Hartman's story wasn't completely true. His wife tragically died in a car crash after finding out he cheated on her. She was so pissed off that she drove recklessly and caused a bad accident. Yo, this dude got his ass kicked outside the bar and had to bounce town. I had to call up my friends to make sure he didn't cause any more trouble. Now he's learned his lesson and won't be messing with any other ladies. On the other hand, Chrissy was able to patch things up with her kids, especially Sally and Kyle. But there was always some tension between her and Tom. I was surprised when Sally welcomed her mom back with open arms. I thought she'd be holding a grudge. Chrissy got back together with her parents, but there was still tension between her and her dad. Even though we had Sunday dinners together often, we weren't really a close-knit family. Chrissy kept saying sorry for things that happened in the past, but I eventually told her to cut it out. I made it clear that I wasn't going to forgive her and there was no point in trying to change my mind. Chrissy, stop acting like a baby. I've already made up my mind and I don't want to argue about it. Conversation over. You can decide if you want to accept it or not, it's up to you. We won't be discussing this anymore. We ain't together no more, even if you were the last chick on earth and humanity depended on it. 3 years later, I ended up marrying Sally's teacher, which was pretty damn awesome. The story of how we met and got hitched was like something out of a movie. It may have been old-fashioned, but the youngins sure loved it. Chrissy, on the other hand, is still having a tough time with my new relationship. When I decided to let her deal with her feelings on her own, she had to choose whether to accept it or not. Chrissy keeps trying to hook up with younger guys, but it never works out. These dudes are only looking for a quick fling, not a serious relationship like Chrissy wants. I think she's just trying to feel young again. Eventually, she smartened up and started seeing older, more mature guys. But that didn't last either. Mick, Chrissy's new man, ended up cheating on her with some hot young thing. And that's when Chrissy spilled the beans about her dating drama to me. She knew it really messed me up when she hooked up with Bruce. Thanks for tuning into today's stories. If you liked what you heard, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on the whole situation. Take care.